Hello, and welcome to the Creative Adventure Podcast, an artist guide to modern freelancing. Thank you for joining me in the tavern today. Put down your sword, put down your axe, close Procreate, order some mead and stew from the bartender. We're talking about communication skills today in the episode of the tavern, wherever you are in your fantasy world. And while we do typically start with a bit of a short story, I actually do want to share a little bit of a life update and how that will affect the podcast a little bit before we do get into today's topic. And that update is I actually have earned an achievement. I have unlocked a new achievement in life, and I have acquired a staff position at my dream company, and it's pretty amazing, pretty great. If you do a little bit of research on the social medias, you might be able to discover a thing. I'm going to keep the company nameless, but that being said, I am still maintaining this podcast, not only because being a creative professional does require a little bit of freelancing skills that apply to a staff position, but really being a creative professional is more than just being an amazing artist. It is a lot of soft skills between knowing how to communicate, knowing how to send emails, maybe a little bit of personal finance stuff, talking about fitness things. And I personally like to identify as being a well-rounded person, and I have made a lot of mistakes along the way. So this podcast purely exists as a resource and a tool for all of my artist friends out there who hopefully want to learn how to make a little bit of money doing their creative thing that they enjoy, and also learn how to sustain it over a long period of time between the mental health, physical health, business things that do pop up. So, that being said, we're starting today's episode with me being at a new staff position with the communication things, because communication is one of the things that has really helped me earn money as a freelancer, and it helped me get into a staff position. So, without further ado, let's talk about how to build some strong communication skills as an artist. Before we get into how to build strong communication skills, I thought it would be worth sharing a little bit of my backstory, my origin story. And if you've been listening to this podcast for a little bit, you'll know that I very much was a social shut-in, playing too much World of Warcraft, highly socially awkward, not knowing how to interact with people in a gracious, gentle way. So, playing way too much World of Warcraft, while it was fun, really just kept me isolated. So breaking away from that, I did try and do some things to help me grow in life, achieve higher levels. And being much younger, there was a period of time where I was trying to earn dates, and earning dates means being able to talk to the opposite gender, and I didn't know how to do that very well. So the first thing I started reading was dating books, how to get a date. And some of those books that I started reading included The Game by Neil Strauss, The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene, to be fully transparent, 48 Laws of Power, etc. And boy, what those books taught me was how not to behave on a date. And I'm very glad I read them, because the last thing anyone wants to be no one wants to be feel like they're being taken advantage of. And reading those books, I'm really glad I did read them, because it did enlighten me on some of the distasteful things that people will do to persuade. So when I realized that those were the only books I was reading, I decided to deviate a little bit and try and approach it from a more altruistic approach on how to communicate better with people. So the books I did start reading to help build strong communication skills that has helped me earn more jobs as a freelancer was How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, 92 Ways to Talk to People by Leal Lowndes, I'm sorry if I'm butchering that, and The Charisma Myth by Olivia Fox Cobain. There's a ton of other business books you can read. Another one of my big favorites is The Win Without Pitching Manifesto by Blair Enns, where it's basically just trying to maintain a sense of power in the relationship as the artist, but ultimately, when we're an artist, maybe trying to sell some work for money, achieve clients, or maybe get a staff position, it's really just connecting with people and communicating. So beyond any gross feelings that you may have when it comes to learning how to advocate for yourself and sell for yourself and be your own biggest fan, a lot of it comes down to self mastery and mastering how to communicate your ideas clearly and gently to people who you might work with in the future. So that is my backstory. That is a little bit of the foundation on where a lot of the concepts in this podcast are going to be coming from. And with that, I want to take a short break. And when we come back from our short rest, we're going to talk about some of the 3 core actionable principles that you can take to be a better communicator as an artist to hopefully maybe land some work. Now, before we do get into those 3 principles, at the end of this episode, what I am going to do is share how I did apply some of these principles that I'm about to share into achieving my dream job. A lot of this has also been a very long time coming as far as like making friends in the industry, putting out good work. So there's no communication magic skill here, but it's about learning how to be a good communicator over time that will slowly, eventually pay off in the long run. So I can give you a lot of these actionable tips now, and if you apply them and be a gentle, kind person that's really consistent and persistent, eventually good things will come. So, what is the first thing that I like to follow when it comes to communicating with people, with friends, or potential business people? It is brevity. Respond as soon as possible for the communications that are a priority. And it's not just prioritizing communication that is potentially going to earn you money, but also with your friends, your family, etc. Brevity. Respond in a timely manner. It's so simple, but ultimately when you don't communicate with people, it's hard to become friends with you because there's no back and forth. There's no exchange of energy. So how do you apply brevity? How do you respond to people in a timely manner? I have a rule, and that is a 24-hour rule. Any relationship that is really important to me, even relationships that may not be super duper important to me, I try and never leave it open. I gently settle the conversation down, but I respond within 24 hours. And I got this tip from a gentleman named Bill Shanus, who used to work at Diamond Distribution, who I've met through family, friends, and connection. He also used to work at Cryptozoic Entertainment, and one of the big things he was trying to advocate when he was helping me at Cryptozoic Entertainment was 24-hour rule. Respond to people within 24 hours, regardless of how important it is. Ideally as soon as possible, but sometimes 24 hours. I will admit, as a freelancer, there may be times where you may have to communicate with someone at 9:30 p.m. at night. And we'll get to how to address that in a second, because you shouldn't be writing 2-hour-long emails or doing revisions at 2 a.m. because someone came in to a super late conversation unless there is a giant emergency. You should learn to set boundaries, but that is why the 24-hour window exists. So if you do need to take some time away from the computer, you still have that time. So 24 hours is the first thing that I recommend most artists just make that a principle, make that a rule about yourself. Trust me, over time you will become the person that is reliable, and it will I feel so strongly saying this, and I'm not very black and white on most things, but I feel very strongly that if you become the person who responds within 24 hours and is very reliable, it will likely lead to maybe some work down the line. May not be for money, but like you will at least help more people because they trust you to communicate with them. So 24-hour response time, that is the first one. The second one that I have really leaned into, especially in the last 2 years of my career, and it has helped me substantially with improving communications with clients and even my friends, is asynchronous communication that is a step beyond what most people do. What is asynchronous communication? Asynchronous communication is non-real-time communication. So you're not talking with them on the phone, you're not in a Zoom call, and you're not texting with them where they're responding to you immediately back. But you go above and beyond with that. So what I have done over the last couple of years to level up my asynchronous communication are 2 strategies that you could do literally right now with the device that literally lives in your pocket. That is voice memos, and video messages. So, first off, let's talk about voice memos. I know it is scary to talk into a void of a device without having any eyes to look at or someone to get feedback on. And it's kind of awkward to end of audio messages like, "Oh, I'm done. Okay, bye." But most communication is done non-verbally. So when you send a voice memo, what that does is brings tone of voice. It brings levity to the communication. If you use a gentle tone of voice, it allows you to speak a little bit more because you can write a giant long paragraph. But when people see that in email, it's intimidating. And when you send people like paragraphs or essays over text, I personally am just like, oh man, I can't get through this. I don't have time for this. But like if I'm walking and I'm like at the grocery store or something, I'll listen to a voice message. It's so much easier. So, voice messages, getting comfortable, and there are certain things that are important to be written in email or in text form. Those include things where there is quantifiable numbers that need to be addressed, such as dates, deliverables, budgets, etc. But if you're talking broad numbers or general abstract ideas, sending a voice message is such an easy way to connect with someone as a human. And this is not just exclusive to business communication. Just sending a voice message to your mom saying like, "Hey, we're planning on getting lunch at X time. Looking forward to seeing you at XYZ." Or at the whatever place you're going to go to. And just saying that verbally just lets them know that like, "Hey, I've seen you, I've heard you, and we have a plan." So the first thing is voice memos, getting comfortable with that. The second is video messages. Now, with video messages, there are a couple strategies you can do this. You can just send a video on your phone, and I personally do this instead of voice messages. I just generally have no chill using the lens and trying to make eye contact and deliberately looking at the lens is a skill. And I know it's a little scary, but it is something that is, I personally believe, going to be an important skill in the coming age of 2025 and onward. But with that, there are other tools that you can use to also demonstrate things that you are trying to show. So in asynchronous communication, if you use something like Loom or Vimeo Pro, or they even have it on Slack, if you're at a corporate position and they use Slack, there's a little record video message down there and you can record your screen. So what I've started doing is when it comes to making pitches with my clients or concepting ideas, rather than just telling them in an email and then sending an attachment, I will send the attachment, I'll write a short blurb in email, but I will also record a video message that walks them through the process and lets them know what stage we're at in the process of making this. I end up doing a lot of spec work for a lot of me trying to get work because most people are not able to read my mind, and I have some idea in my head. So using sketches and work in progress drafts along with a verbal, like with video, has helped me immensely with getting pitches, landing clients, and really making the people who I collaborate with feel so much more confident about the work I'm doing with them. So asynchronous communication could be either voice messages, video messages, and it matters because it helps build this sense of trust because you're showing rather than telling. Show, don't tell, especially as an artist, because it's going to be so much easier for people to understand what you're trying to do. Now, the last thing is proactivity. Being proactive means trying to anticipate the needs of your client. And when you do that, it shows that you are hearing them, you are seeing them, and you want to let them know that you are going to be reliable to solve the problem. And that happens when you're proactive. When you have to be reactive to a client responding to you, you are losing trust and you are losing faith with the person you're working with. And this is not just with business relationships. It's also with friends, it's with dating. There's so many opportunities where you can be a little bit proactive, and it makes the planning process of just hanging out with friends so much easier. When you say, "Hey, let's get let's go get lunch at this restaurant at this time on this date." How does that sound? You're being very proactive with the very specific steps. If you're going out on a date with someone of the opposite gender or the same gender, however you swing, just saying like, "Hey, I really loved hanging out with you and I want to hang out with you again. I want to go see a movie with you. How about we go see I don't know, Superman on Friday at 5:30 p.m. at this theater. Does that sound like fun? Question mark. Leave it at that. But what that is being very proactive about the plan. So the other person, they don't really have to think, they just have an option. And in business situations, when you're trying to pitch ideas, being very proactive with a couple options is always going to be an easy way to make a really good experience for your client. Now, how do you be proactive? A lot of it just comes down to show, don't tell. Going back to the previous example of asynchronous communication, if you can show a little bit of what you're trying to explain, it will help everyone make decisions moving forward. Now, we do need to talk about the brevity note because you can't always mock up something within 24 hours. So sometimes it's a little bit of give and take. You can't always show the best thing, and that's okay. But honestly, communication and strong communication will end up always being better than perfect work every single time until you're ready to deliver the project. I've seen it so many times between working at other studios where they will do really rough concept pitches, but the number one thing they do is they do not miss their deadlines, and they always are showing up at 2 meetings on time with enough stuff to show to really create a dialogue about moving the project forward. And a lot of that just comes down to being really consistent with your communication skills. So with all of that, I want to take a short rest, and when we come back, we're going to talk about how I applied some of these principles to me getting a staff position and how you could potentially apply it to you as an artist moving forward to grow into your career or wherever you're at, build stronger communication skills. So just to quickly recap, the 3 main communication skills that are actionable that you can do literally right now are brevity, respond within 24 hours, get rid of all of the red bubble notifications on your phone that you see, be asynchronous with your communication. Use voice messages and video messages if possible to help move forward communication for things that may end up being long-winded, and for things that are quantifiable that require dates, numbers, budgets, etc. Make sure you include that in the email. But be very specific and speak with confidence. Even if you don't feel comfortable saying, like talking about the numbers, just learning how to talk about the numbers verbally will build trust with your client or and even your friends, because it's like you can't argue the numbers. You can't argue that like this project costs this much, or you can't argue the fact that hey, this movie is at this time. You can't control the movie theater. You can't negotiate that. So being very specific with things that are quantifiable in your asynchronous communication is very important. And then lastly, to recap, is being proactive. Being able to anticipate needs is always going to make whoever you're trying to hang out with, friends or clients, they'll feel so much more confident. How did I apply this to getting a staff position? Well, beyond these 3 skills, one of the most important things I've generally found is to be a warm person, be a kind, gentle, generous person. And when you're reliable and kind and you bring on good energy to things, eventually you're going to find the right people at the right time and it will lead to opportunity. So it is worth mentioning that like a lot of the industry, especially the creative industry, it's very much it's a small group, and it's a very small world. You end up making friends all over the place because it's just like, oh, this person knows that person. So being warm, being generous, being kind is so important, but then being reliable and being proactive. So during the interview process, after every single interview, I would always follow up immediately on LinkedIn, following the 24-hour principle, and just say, hey, thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking about XYZ. I listened very clearly during the interview, took some notes, made sure I responded, and I got followed up immediately after. The second thing, beyond the follow-up and following the brevity note, is the asynchronous communication. When I followed up on LinkedIn with whoever was interviewing me, I made sure I sent a video note, or an audio note, ideally video, if it was possible. I think I only sent video notes, but I sent a video note recapping everything that was talked about. Just saying like, hey, I heard you, I see you, I'm hoping we can move this forward. I didn't demand anything. I didn't demand any specific new job interviews, and I just wanted to make friends. Ultimately, goes back to being warm and kind. And then the last thing is being very proactive. During the whole interview process, I will admit there was periods where I probably was a little annoying after like about a week when I didn't hear something, because sometimes the interview process is a little slow. I would just say, hey, haven't heard from you in a while. Hope all is well. Just want to let you know I'm just hanging tight. I'm doing some research on my own end. So check out some of the stuff that I've been working on. I did do a little bit of spec work to help show initiative and being proactive. And again, that's just really keeping up with the asynchronous communication as well, sending a video note and being very proactive rather than reactive. So a lot of the big things about communication skills, it's soft skills. It's hard to quantify. You can't say I've produced X many pieces of illustrations or whatever else, but the way you make people feel is going to be the most memorable thing, and a lot of that comes down to how you communicate with people. And you could always refer back to some of the books I recommended earlier. Those are How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, 92 Ways to Talk to People, The Charisma Myth by Olivia Fox Cobain, and I even do recommend the stuff by Robert Greene, and that is 48 Laws of Power and The Art of Seduction. Really, just being a warm, gentle, kind person and being reliable will be the best thing you can do to learn how to communicate with people, and also just learning how to look people in the eye and just see them for who they are in that moment. So there's so many things that you can do to build better communication skills, between learning how to ask the right questions, how to better understand people's needs, how to better anticipate needs. So the last thing I want to do today is share with you a couple like tips, tricks, and hacks that have really helped me make better friends as a communicator. And this is coming from someone who did play too much World of Warcraft, where I had a very one-sided perspective of interests. I didn't really know how to communicate with people beyond uh, just playing World of Warcraft. And so the things I want to share with you are the following. The first is one question that causes a lot of reflection with people. And the question I ask anyone that I'm just meeting for the very first time is, how do you like to spend your time? And that question came from the book 92 Ways to Talk to People. And it's useful because most people ask, hey, what do you do for work? And realistically, not everyone wants to talk about their work. But what I will add is everyone loves to talk about their hobbies, the things that they're into, their dog, their movies they're watching, etc. So I always preface the question, or preface meeting with someone with, how do you like to spend your time? And typically that catches people off guard. Now that I'm sharing it, more people will maybe be asking this question. But how do you like to spend your time will typically open up the, well, I'm a bookkeeper for work, but outside of work, I really love to go windsurfing. And it's like, oh, cool, great. What can I pull from windsurfing? Oh, you must go to the beach. Okay, cool. What's your favorite spot to get food after you go windsurfing? And another big thing is I will share, and I got this from 92 Ways to Talk to People, is everyone loves food. Everyone loves to talk about their favorite restaurants. What do they like to cook? What do they like to eat? Most people like food. And the last thing I will share with this is if you talk to someone and they don't like food, they are probably into fitness. And if they are into fitness, then you can talk about, oh, so you're not a big foodie, but that's okay. Why is that? Are you just really interested in your health and your nutrition? You just keep your diet pretty simple. Really just trying to dig deep into the behaviors and answers that someone gives you when you ask them the question of how do you like to spend your time. Another question that I've came up with myself, and this is my economics brain, rather than asking people, hey, how's it going? Because every single time you're going to get the answer of, good, I'm good. It's autopilot mode. Get to questions that are beyond what people seek in autopilot. So the question I ask is, how are you on a scale of 1 to 10? And if you've ever heard me ask this question, you will probably hear me ask the same follow-up question. How can we get you to a +1? So if I ask, hey, how are you on a scale of 1 to 10? And they say, oh, I'm an 8.5. And I'm like, oh, 8.5, that's pretty good. What would make it a 9? And then it just gets them to think about like their mood, their day, what's going on. And if they're like, oh, I don't know, it's like, how about a snack? Because most people like food. So again, Jags is a food focused dog. But ultimately, asking questions that provoke reflection are going to be the ways in which you can help a conversation move forward. And maybe you could talk about the art that someone's working on. It's like, hey, how do you feel about your current art piece on a scale of 1 to 10? And they will respond and be like, okay, why are you a 7 out of 10 on this art piece? And then they can share more about that and just being really curious. And that's the big thing across most of these communication books. It's learning how to be curious. Now, the biggest thing when it comes to being a curious communicator is understand that it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be one of those things where learning how to ask the right questions is going to be a little awkward sometimes. And there are still moments where I feel like an awkward mess when I stumble over my words. I may have said slightly the wrong thing. I phrased something incorrectly. I'll even tell a little bit of a story. I was talking to a friend at a Camp MoGraph event a couple years ago, and if you're an illustrator, you're probably familiar with the software Procreate. And the person who I was speaking with, I've been friendly with in the past. We don't talk a whole lot, but I was like, hey, how's it going? What have you been up to? Have you been procreating? And the second I said those words, I was like, oh my God, what did I just say? So, really, it's just a matter of like, okay, hold on. That's okay. We all have those moments, but like just getting like rather than shutting in, and there's something I used to do playing way too much World of Warcraft, all I would do is just like, oh, I'm gonna avoid every single moment of communication because it could lead to rejection. I've just let myself let those moments happen, and it is just learn from them. Learning from communication fumbles will always be the best thing you can do moving forward. So, I hope you enjoyed this slightly shorter episode of the Creative Adventure podcast. If you enjoyed this, if you got something out of it, I would love to hear in the comment section or review section. So hopefully I can keep making content that is valuable to you. I hope the time was worth it because you're not getting it back, but I hope you join me in the tavern again. And as always, we are going to end with a dice roll. We're going to use the very nice D20 that has been very kind to us the last couple of months. So it is this guy right here. Here we go. Let us see how your next conversation is going to go. Is it going to go great, or are we going to have to make some persuasion or deception checks? We'll see. That's a 6. Could be better. So we gotta roll again at some point. We just made a dumb joke. Now we have to come back from that. So thank you so much for listening to the Creative Adventure podcast. Until next time, may the freelance dice forever roll in your favor. Take care.